Hi, welcome back. I am particularly excited and honored to have a unique guest here today, someone who is extraordinarily accomplished in the field of analytics and AI and has taken this huge task on of creating governance models and solutions that are going to help organizations do AI more responsibly, ethically, transparently. Meeri Haataja, thank you for being here. If you would, please introduce yourself a little bit and what you're going to be talking about today.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Al, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Loving to be in this community. Meeri Haataja. I'm a founder, entrepreneur, founder of Saidot. We are almost 3 years old startup based in Finland, focusing really on responsible AI, building trust between companies, AI applications, and consumers, users in general.
Well, if you would, before, I know you have some slides to share, but before we get into that, you have been in this field and AI has been around for a while. However, its adoption and its influence on how customers are understood, how workers are understood, has really accelerated over the last 5 years or so. So you have tons of options, I would say, given your background, but you chose to create a site up for a reason. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that before you jump in?
Yeah, you're right. My background is also in analytics and AI, basically whole career before starting as an entrepreneur. I was actually working in corporations in driving AI into different business processes and so forth. So founding moment for me was that in my last role, I was not only responsible for driving AI in the largest financial services company in my country, but also got GDPR data protection on my table. So that sort of shifted my thinking, and at the same time, we started to see also a lot of things happening in the market, also problems that became very problematic, also not from the end users, consumers perspective, but also for the companies for not having seen that in advance and so forth. So I got pretty convinced that AI is influencing our world in such a large scale that we need to start thinking more comprehensively about the impacts that we are having. And also I noticed that actually AI teams need a lot of support in that one, figuring out how to actually operationalize those great principles that many of the companies and organizations deploying AI have put in place, but are lacking that practical perspective, how to actually put it in practice. So yeah.
So here you are. I identify a need and fill it. And again, kudos to you, because it is obviously not an easy solve. It's something that takes work, and it's something that we'll have to stick with ongoing. And so you have actually a sustainable solution there. So for right now, I'm going to get out of the way, disappear, let you share for the next 20 minutes or so, and then I'll come back and we'll have a chat about it.
Yeah, maybe just briefly to continue on that motivation and my background. At the moment, I'm really working with Saidot, full-time, focusing on making responsible AI approachable and efficient, easy for organizations, deploying AI in different business processes, companies willing to build trust with the stakeholders, also in relation to how they use technology. I think what is important in this and coming also from analytics AI space previously, is that I truly believe on the opportunities, great opportunities that we have with AI in making people's lives, companies' lives easier, more efficient, and so forth. So there are great benefits that we all want to achieve by taking into use these new technologies. And also one key motivation to work on governance and responsible AI is really to avoid those major backlashes on this development that would happen due to us neglecting some of the impacts that we should be paying attention to. Also, I'm chairing IEEE's ethics certification program and working also with the research community at Harvard University on taking forward these topics. But today I was thinking of sharing some of the experiences that we have with Saidot now, having worked on this area a few years, building product for this area, and then actually working on a very operational level with a lot of companies and public organizations who are actually willing to operationalize these topics. Maybe as a starting point, I would like to share the vision that we have, or what is driving in this area is really a target to bring world-leading, really top-notch responsible AI capacity and capability to companies of any size. I think this topic, if you follow what is happening, we have been doing a lot of analysis and looking into large companies and how they are doing AI governance, what they are doing in this space, and we have a lot of technology companies, large organizations who have great teams focusing on this area. But then the question is, how do we bring that same capacity, same expertise to all the other organizations who don't have those same resources in putting effort in this? And that really motivates us to find new ways of addressing these questions in a way that it could be approachable from any company, from startups to larger organizations and also public organizations. Going into, so what is that top-notch capability in responsible AI? I wanted to share this one framework. Hopefully that could be helpful for you if you are thinking in your company how to comprehensively address responsible AI. What kind of themes, what are all the things that you should consider when putting in place responsible AI or AI governance operating model? We went through a lot of analysis of these world-leading companies who have been putting a lot of effort in this area, and then obviously, having worked in this area as well, and try to put together this kind of framework that actually helps companies. Even if you look from CSR or ESG strategy program perspective, what are all the things that you should consider under responsible AI as part of your CSR strategy? What are also the themes that you could think of reporting externally when communicating about how you're addressing responsible AI in your organization? It starts from strategy and values. We have seen many companies to launch their ethical principles. That's one very, very important sort of practical means for that one. People and culture, I personally think we are talking way little about people and culture, what kind of skills, roles we need in organizations to be able to actually do this work, to go through those ethical considerations, do systematic governance of these systems, but also what kind of culture we need to create in order to people to have safe environment to raise questions and raise issues on table. Stakeholder engagement is one of the most important themes in responsible AI, in my opinion, and that's also something that we really are focusing a lot when building our platform. So all the ways how we actually engage with the stakeholders to who we are impacting with this technology, how do we communicate, share our plans, and collect feedback from these organizations, but also what are our ways to actually ensure the whole supply chain, AI supply chain responsibility? How do we work with our vendors and suppliers, technology suppliers? Then on the governance domain, down there we have those practical things that go across all the system, basically system development process. When we develop something new, what are the practical activities that we need to take care of, like risk and impact assessment, testing and validation related to bias and so forth. accountability structures. Many companies are putting in place oversight forums who have a role to review and support in this kind of difficult ethical considerations and discussions. That's really accountability structures, super important part of the whole strategy. And finally, transparency and reporting practices. So there are a lot of things under these topics, but one thing I really want to encourage everyone to also, when you read companies' CSR reports, where they communicate about their responsibility, environmental, social, governance-related factors, pay attention to these topics, because when you see that companies who are intensively using AI in their strategy, they have already started to systematically communicate about these different aspects as part of those reports. So that's something really interesting. So if that's some top-notch capability on responsible AI, so how the interesting question and what really motivates us in Saidot is how do we do this in scale? How do we address that question? How to provide this world-leading capability for small organizations, for organizations who have less capacity to put their own human resources or invest in this area. I think there are four different really key pillars how to address this scalable operationalizing of responsible AI. And first is very clearly answer to many similar types of questions in other areas. We need to use technology and standardize the ways how we operate. That will help us in really pushing through in scale similar types of ways of working. And one of the main things in really addressing the problem in scale. Ecosystem play, I think anyone who is seriously operationalizing AI, responsible AI, needs to or eventually notices that this is not only our problem. We are using a lot of suppliers, technology vendors, whose technology we are using and bringing to the market, using in our use cases. So it is absolutely essential to build in the ways how to actually engage with the vendors, how to engage or ensure the responsible AI supply chain. How do you gain enough information from those vendors of their technology and so forth? Stakeholder engagement is very important as well, and I think in terms of identifying risks, that's one of the core questions in the whole responsible AI. How do we make sure that we see all those risks that we should be seeing and find good ways to mitigate those risks? So stakeholder engagement is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful and efficient ways to address that one, and that's the reason why we are specifically paying attention with our product to actually enable efficient ways of stakeholder engagement, sharing information and receiving feedback from key stakeholders. And finally, collaborative learning. How do we build mechanisms with the help of technology to learn from others' work on this area? When we start to know that, okay, in this and this area, workforce management, for example, this and these risks are always present when we're doing that kind of systems or taking into use similar systems. We need to find ways to actually feed that back to the teams in the moment when they are starting to develop those systems. And that kind of collaborative learning, nudging and recommendations in the platform is really key part of this scalable and efficient way of addressing these questions. I have here some screens then in the end to show how does it look in practice. So practically we are building technology platform. It's platform from that perspective that we are really serving different kinds of stakeholders. at the heart there our customers, large and small organizations who are developing or deploying into use AI-based technologies in their businesses. For them, we're providing this platform to build that AI register to actually systematically govern and document their AI systems. We also have that supply chain perspective in the platform capacity to invite technology vendors to provide similar kind of information over there, and then different means for communicating about that information to those different stakeholders. When thinking about this this first problem, how do we systematize, bring same methodology, documentation practices into this area? There we have worked now almost 3 years on putting together hopefully the world's most comprehensive metadata model for AI transparency. That's basically giving that structure for all the information that we need to know in relation to how the AI systems work and how to structure that information. Our users on the platform interface with this metadata model basically through forms in the platform, which tell the users that always when developing or taking into use this kind of system, these are the areas you need to document your data catalog. You need to go through your risk management, build your risk catalog, build your data catalog, think about the human oversight and so forth. So that's really one of the first steps, and I think personally a major efficiency factor when driving this through in larger organization. Vendor templates are basically the means for organization to, when you're deploying same off-the-shelf technologies into different kinds of use cases, you don't want to spend that time re-documenting everything again for different cases. So that's why we have enabled these vendor templates on the platform, so that you can request that information from the vendor. Vendor can maintain that information, and then you can take it into use in different use cases and basically do only the incremental part of the documentation and risk assessment also what comes to taking it into different use cases. Very new feature that we are now just putting live there is sharing capability. So this need that we need to be able to consult our stakeholders. We need to get our internal stakeholders, business owners, possibility to understand how the systems are working. We might be having oversight teams, or we might want to consult external experts or get audits to our systems. This is what we want to really enable with this private sharing capability. So idea that you don't want to put all that detailed information live there, openly, publicly available for everyone, but you need to have that possibility to share it privately. So that's what we're enabling now with this private sharing capability. Basically, password protected access to all that information that you have put together on the platform there. And finally, then, which is the beautiful and nice part of the whole thing, is then when you want to communicate, and we have increasing needs also from the upcoming regulations in this area, how do you communicate in a user-friendly, context-specific manner about trust and AI transparency to your end users. So that's what we are answering through our design system. These are a couple of examples. Two of our customers, City of Amsterdam and Helsinki, put out there quite radical idea in the public sector to actually create this public AI register to show what are all those AI systems that we are having in use in our city. This is one way of implementing the end user informing. But in future, I believe where the world is going is that we will have those transparency features also built in our algorithmic applications, and that is also what we want to support by having that information in the AI register on the back end, and then supporting great designs user-friendly designs for how to inform the end users with our design system. So that was what I was thinking for this. Maybe just to close it up, if there are people who are interested on the EU proposed regulation, this was a sort of major moment, obviously, for us being in this business, but also I think for everyone in the people analytics space, that EU Commission very recently, a couple of weeks ago, launched their proposal for AI regulation, and that is something where high-risk applications, including a lot of people analytics cases, are now set some new requirements regarding risk management, technical documentation processes around those systems. So with our product, we are obviously willing to make it easy and easily approachable, efficient for any people analytics and other high-risk AI systems focused companies to address also that future compliance requirement.
Hey, Meeri, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm taken on a variety of fronts. Number one, you have taken on, like I said at the outset, a big problem and created a solution that is simple, is understandable, and obviously it has a virtual purpose to look out for those who are generating this data, namely workers, customers. And so I have several questions, and I'll start from the very beginning. AI is esoteric to many, even within organizations defining what it is. Artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, is it different than analytics? How do you define AI?
I was wondering that should I now open the EU Commission's definition of that, because when you look at that proposed regulation, it's actually very comprehensive, covering I guess, like, all the different ways of doing analytics. Machine learning is where it always starts, but then how I've addressed this is basically that actually, it doesn't that much matter. The question is about how we are using technology in these sensitive use case areas. And when I discuss with our customers and get these questions, what should be registered there or managed with this kind of approach, I think more it's especially at the moment when there is not that clear compliance requirements required by the law, but it's more the motivation for companies is for trust. So what are those systems that you think are sensitive in that sense, that you have you feel that it's necessity to have this better governance, and you might be already hearing questions from the stakeholders where there might be concerns related to how you're using data and so forth. So at the moment, I think that should be driving where we're actually taking into use different data-driven algorithmic systems in a way that it's sensitive and requires that stakeholder trust that we can build with this kind of approach.
And everything that you're talking about, when you talk about risk assessment, ethics, adverse impact analyses, these are specialized skills. There's ways of doing this, and there's ways of thinking. And so when you talk about stakeholder relationship management or stakeholder engagement, it invites the question, if you don't have something understandable, explainable to talk about, what are you talking about? It's like, well, we're gathering this data from all these systems, and there's calculations going on, and there's metrics being calculated, and if you can't explain it, then it's a stop. And
it's hard to have meaningful conversation.
Exactly. And so I've seen some frankly throw up their arms and say, "Oh, we'll get to it." As we're not going to get in that much trouble, or the risk of doing something bad is low. However, that's no longer true, even if it was true before. So what I'm getting at is this: is that many organizations have tried to do this internally, and they've struggled because they haven't had the expertise, or they haven't had the processes and systems to actually facilitate this transparency and this explainability. So is that a fair summary of what you're bringing to the fore, is the means in which to make it explainable and actually have meaningful discussions so the trade-offs can be assessed accurately and conscious decisions made moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was actually when we started our journey. We went through and analyzed a lot of those ethics principles, and like I don't know how many hours I spent on trying to figure out what is important here, and how should I address. And I always came to that thinking that okay, in order to be able to verify or validate or even have that meaningful conversation whether our system is non-biased or not having harmful biases, we need to know more about that system. So I figured out that actually transparency is that in a way it's really foundational, because you cannot have accountability without transparency. You cannot verify that the system isn't having harmful biases if you don't know how the system works. So that's why we felt that we need to first put in place this transparency, so that we can actually then have all the rest of those good principles and those discussions over there. So yeah, I'm not saying that transparency is solving everything, but that's enabler for so many essential things that we know being needed when doing things in a responsible way.
Got it. And so as you're doing this, who is your buyer? Most of our audience is either rooted in rooted in HR, or they have HR is a significant customer or client. And so my question is IT your buyer? Is it legal? Is it digital transformation? Who is the one championing you coming in and doing this work?
That's a very good question. I will start first by saying, who are the ones who are in the table? So obviously there is AI lead in that table, or digital lead, depending a little bit on the organization. There is typically also privacy officer, they have interest to now take role in this area. But what I think is super interesting is that more and more, maybe half of the discussions that I'm having with companies start from corporate social responsibility, CSR, ESG lead. And I think that's absolutely positive development. I think these people, sustainability leaders, are the ones who need to also recognize that technology has a role to play in here. We need to also be interested in how do we govern our technology impacts. So those are the ones. And obviously then when we're talking about specific domains of using AI, then like HR, for example, then obviously it is those people who have the accountability in the organization, who are responsible for these systems. They have interest, actually. They start to recognize that, okay, it is my role to also manage this risk. I need to know more about what we are doing in this space and have these things in order. So they have that personal driver also to manage this work better and build better portfolio view and take into use these governance practices.
I love that answer so much. It just because CSR has been gaining momentum over particularly the past 10 years for a variety of reasons. And it then invites the question, how does those initiatives that are coming out of just the CSR guiding principles actually have teeth? How do they actually have something that can be shown that we are not only complying, but we're going beyond just compliance and advocating on behalf of the worker, on behalf of the customer, or whatever the case may be. So with that as staging, there are many, and again, I'm focusing on the people analytics field for a second, who say, okay, we're not going to do this as an enterprise tomorrow. We, however, need better governance framework because, after all, we're using employee or worker data, and there's a level of sensitivity there. So, obviously, a very significant level of sensitivity. So, my question: if an HR organization, I just want this not at a CSR or enterprise level, but just for my discipline, is that feasible? What are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. I think those people need to act who see that they have a lot of responsibility in their hands, and they are not comfortable of the level how they are these are governed at the moment. What is really important here as well, that in many organizations we are only starting, the volume might be still relatively low, and that's like, how to match that okay, we have this high risk cases and really influential cases where we would actually need that top-notch governance capability, but we only have it there, like isolated 1 or 2 applications. So how do we match that? And that's actually the reason why we are increasingly working on this governance as a service approach. So providing that capacity to actually operate that governance for those organizations, help building that capability and scaling it up when you're taking into use more and more of these systems. We obviously have the need also to educate the teams in the organizations, because that just makes sense to have some of the skills in the organizations as well. But that's the way how we are now seeing really demand to be able to address this problem of there is totally new area that we need to be able to tackle, but our volume is still very limited. So that's one way also to address that.
Well, governance as a service just sounds cool because it does take focus, it does take skill, as we talked about before. And so my question to you, does governance as a service also include facilitation, identifying the proper stakeholders, identifying the proper questions to ask, and then packaging and summarizing your learnings? I mean, what does governance as a service look like?
Yeah, basically it covers everything related to this governance, except that the responsibility is still with the owner of the service. So we cannot outsource accountability for the systems, but we are providing all the needed support to actually provide that workforce to actually go through those practical activities, meaning documenting the technical documentation, how does the system work, then identifying the stakeholders who we should be consulting in the process, doing those consultations, risk management, identifying, and that's where we can really bring value, because by focusing on this one, you start to see those same risks appear in different organizations. So identifying the relevant risks and then figuring out good management or mitigation means for those. So going through that whole process, except that and informing the organization, helping them to actually carry that accountability then.
And if I hear you correctly, would you then in that role make recommendations on go, no-go decisions regarding certain projects, because the bias or adverse impact could be beyond a certain threshold? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. That's absolutely what we should be doing in that role when there is that kind of a system in question, that we go through that analysis, understand how it works, and we see that that now the risks are in that level that we cannot by any meaningful means to actually mitigate those into the level that that would be suitable for going forward with it. So yeah, that's one part, and then the difficult decision would be with the customer to actually decide to not go forward with that.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to toggle a little bit, because there is legislative reason you're doing what you do. and arguably it started before GDPR, but GDPR was probably the landmark event that said, okay, this is no longer, a nice to have. This is a critical element of how we have to do things. And there was an update last month to that. Do you want to speak to how GDPR has created an impetus for this type of solution and what has transpired since, particularly with the update last month?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, like how to bridge it. Actually, many things are there in GDPR. Maybe and how you framed it, like as a sort of like GDPR 2, or like something like on top of that. This EU AI Act that they call it, so Artificial Intelligence Act. So I guess it became very clear after the GDPR, getting that in place, that that's not covering all the risks that we are seeing in practice happening. So especially the fundamental rights related risks, non-discrimination and so forth, but also safety related questions are not, like, we are not able to govern those with GDPR only. So I think there, over the last few years, not only in Europe but also what I followed North American news and things happening there, we have seen these activities in the regulative side as well. Some states or cities have prohibited some of the facial recognition systems and so forth. So I think this whole discussion has really made it pretty clear during the last few years that actually something is needed on top of that. And yeah, really, I think this is now not only important for Europe but whole world, because this is I based on what I know about this one, this is the first globally this scale proposed solution for actually regulating these things, so that it wouldn't be any more only ethical question, but it would be actually compliance after that one. So
right. And part of your offering is effectively having a content library of these updates to laws in different regions throughout the world. Is that correct as well?
Well, that's part of the, as I was talking about the governance service, that's obviously like key part of that that work that you need to do continuously in order to be able to provide that governance as a service, or even develop your technology platform in a way that it actually serves the market in a right way. So we figured out this is what we are doing. This is like what we are doing pretty well. So that's also what we can provide for our customers. And that's what we try to do all the time, is not only report what is happening, but also reflect that in the policies, in the governance models, and in the platform, so that it gets operationalized. So in that sense, it's not a medium or news media, but taking that into interpreting those changes also into these materials and frameworks, policies.
Yeah, gosh, I thank you for sharing that, because it is overwhelming to most individuals and organizations. It's rarely someone's focus to stay on top of what's happening in the regions in which they're doing business. So if that can be provided as a service, just that alone, and obviously augmented by a tool, would be, and process would be hugely valuable, at least in my perception of things. I have a few more questions, and then I want to share or ask you to share how people can learn more about you and Saidot. It's really around the notion that we are going to a future of work that is going to use common language, going to be hybrid, where people are going to work from home. There's going to be a heightened level of trust that they're going to do their work when and where they would like, given their life stage and a variety of other factors. Women have been adversely impacted here in the States, by the pandemic and really around the world. What I'm getting at is that there are digital fingerprints, digital exhaust being generated all the time. And organizations have used it historically to make efficiency decisions on how many number of people we should have, what locations we should be in. However, this data is being generated by people, and it can be used for their benefit, or in some cases, it can be used with conscious or unconscious bias to their detriment. So my question is this: as you see the workplace and just the nature of work shifting and changing, what do you hope analytics and AI will do to provide more humanistic decision making, more humanistic work experiences? Do you hope that this is a conscious effort within organizations to leverage data to provide better clarity, better transparency, so they can make wiser decisions? And embedded within that is, why do you not think it's happening more pervasively now?
Oh, I would like to ask, like, what do you think about this one? So it's, but in general, I think, yeah, this is, as a startup entrepreneur, I know very well of like this world, that what you're talking about, balancing those different roles, and even different, you might be having several different jobs. So I think that the world is becoming, it can become much more stressful, much more difficult to navigate, unless we actually in a good way are able to utilize that data for the benefits, to make it easier and more relaxing for people to navigate in that world. So I definitely see a lot of opportunities, and would like to get the support from those different organizations to navigate in this world. But there is this other side, obviously. But I really trust in that. I think today's world is so complex that no one should try to innovate in an isolation without those consultations and actually asking. That's the most efficient way to avoid some really serious clashes, to actually open your plans for consultation, for feedback, and then act on that one. So, because anyways, one day it will become clear for everyone what is being done. So better plan it in a sustainable way from the beginning.
Well, because thank you for that answer, because I know firsthand that there are a lot of people in enterprises that have anxiety because they know that there's data being collected on them, and they know it's being used in ways to formulate org strategy, promotions, learning opportunities, all who gets what work. All these decisions are now rooted in database decision making in most organizations. However, many workers just don't know this, what data, how it's being used, and so there's anxiety, and it compromises trust. And some organizations are maintaining trust because they have this transparency and ongoing communication to the workforce. So with AI, which you're way more articulate than me on this, insofar as you have data sets, you bring them together, you can create metrics, and then you apply algorithms and effectively math, and then that math does math on top of math, and the ability to understand the calculations by any one human being can fall by the wayside, and you're like, okay, there's an output. How did that output get generated? So going back to the understanding the algorithms and the math and the underlying processes, and then communicating back to the workforce or other stakeholders, like, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. I imagine that's part of your role as well, is just bridging that gap between data collection and communication to maintain trust. Is that, fair? And what would you,
Absolutely.
yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a false idea, or and it's like not only like how we're talking about in this discussion, but overall there's a lot of discussion that AI is something so complex that we're not able to explain it. It's like not possible to create that. To that question, I've been discussing with a lot of data scientists, and then if I ask one data scientist, okay, do you have absolutely any idea what you're doing with your system? So I've never heard that answer that I have no idea what is happening here. So that's it. We don't need to have like every piece of detail explainable, but we need to strive for that enough good enough understanding so that we can figure out the risk or issues or trust in this system. But that's about putting those into pieces and finding good ways to somehow bridge between the technical developers and all those people who are impacted by this technology or who need to understand it for other reasons. So how do we communicate? So it's one actually fascinating thing that we're now preparing is a workshop on copywriting. So how do you copyright that description of the system where you actually tell how the system works and how can you improve that way by just doing good copywritings. But it's a lot about communication. And I think based on my experience, most of the companies really want to do good things for their workforce, for their employers, customers, on this opacity of not communicating anything and then only hearing what is talked in news about this one. That creates that room for distrust and concern. So already breaking that with actually communicating what are the things that you're and why you are doing this. That you're doing that is very important step in building that trust.
Yeah, gosh, I know your principal target or client base is large enterprises, but it's dawning on me. Do you also consult to technology companies, AI providers?
Sorry?
To AI solution providers?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's the whole vendor space. We are working with several startups on this area, companies who are providing either ready-made technologies or developing custom made technologies for large enterprises. So it can actually start from either way, by the large organization to request for that transparency from smaller one or the vendor, or it can start by the startup or a smaller technology provider who actually wants to knows that, okay, this is what we need to do. We want to be responsible in relation to how our technology works, and they want to provide that. And that's like what we really what I want to see is that large enterprises start to see these Saidot materials or guides and transparency to their suppliers' technologies being spread around through that sharing capability that we facilitate on our platform. So, and hopefully that will then trigger that, okay, this is actually something we really want to see from all of our vendors. So that's the moment when the enterprise then needs to make it systematic for across their AI supply chain.
So I have probably one more question before we wrap up here, and so thank you for that response. But no buts. It's this: is that there's SOC compliance here in the States. Well, actually, it's around the world. When I hear CSR, I think of the B Corp movement. And as you likely know, for public benefit corporations, there's a certification process that an organization has to go through every 2 years. So this is the question for you around responsible AI governance. Do you foresee a future where there will be some type of certification by a third party to say, okay, we are taking these steps around AI governance, and it's a badge, if you will, or certification that they can show the world that they're doing this? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm personally involved in that certification process, which is focused on systems. That's what I'm thinking initially, that, okay, no certification then can guarantee that the organization is always responsible across all their systems. So we really need to focus also on systems. And I think there is a lot of activities going on in bringing to the market different kinds of certifications. We have auditing companies who are in financial audits, like, building businesses on AI auditing. So that system level certifications and auditing is something that is this is absolutely coming, and there is a lot of activity in that area. Saying that, I think it's probably 100% guarantee that there will be also certification programs for people who are working in these kinds of roles in organizations, and then organizations getting some kind of stamps for that. So yeah, it's an emerging market. What we really want to work with Saidot also is that whoever sees that a company is working, or public organization is using our platform, that's a sign of trust for everyone, because they know that, okay, then this means that this organization is following the best practices. They have this certain level of documentation, and they are using those tools. So I'm not talking about certification there in that context, but sign of trust, having that built into to company working with us on these topics.
All right. Well, Meeri, thank you for doing what you do. It is much needed, as you just argued. And it's also the case where, as we proceed over time, this is going to only grow. The need is not going to go away. So personally, I think you and your organization are very well positioned. I also believe that given my visibility, and I say this compassionately, many organizations, large and small, haven't addressed this adequately. So the need is not only compliance or related, it is business need related. So I'm really excited for you. So how can listeners, viewers learn more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, best way is to just send email to Meeri at Saidot AI, so we can talk more, or go to our social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, and then Saidot.ai is the website. So any channel, just getting contacts. And what is important, that this is absolutely not ready, this space. So we really want to be there, building this community of organizations who are actively working on operationalizing, and also connect these organizations between each other to learn from that experience. What is it to actually put in place all these good practices in governance? So it's exciting journey to learn together and learn about different kinds of use cases together.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And wish you the best. I'm here to help, because I'm somewhat obviously, I'm the objective guy. At the same time, I see there's real deficiency in the space, and I love not only what you're doing, but how you're doing it. So I wish you all the success, and hope to see you in person. And thanks for joining from Finland, as it's the late in the day there on this Friday.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was really nice discussing, and yeah, I really appreciate the work that you are doing in this community and taking it forwards. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, you be well. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.